If you have a big dog, you know that one of the hardest things to get started with them is leash pulling. They start like a freight train coming out your door, pulling you down the street, sometimes pulling you over. Really hard to stop them, especially with their weight and size and power. But today what I'm gonna do is give you the exact tips that you need to focus on getting your big dog to stop pulling as quickly as possible. And you can do this in as little as one training session with your dog. Then you can go back and work on the fine-tuned little pieces to make it a better behavior overall. So today, let's focus on how we can get our big dog to stop pulling as quickly as possible. Then we can work on the fine-tuned steps. Now, before I start working with a very big dog that's a hard leash puller to show you how to do this, first of all, equipment. What equipment do you need? I recommend 4 things. 1, a leash. I prefer a 6-foot leather leash. Number 2 would be a Fur Saver training collar. You could also use a martingale training collar. I would recommend a Fur Saver or a martingale to start. There are other collars out there that you can use. You can use a prong collar for sure. There's a wide variety of training collars, but I like the Fur Saver myself. The 3rd thing is going to be a bait bag so that you can hold the 4th thing, which is going to be food rewards. That's it. Before we get into the details on what you need to start with your leash pulling, first let's understand, why does your dog actually pull on the leash? And this comes down to opposition reflex. When we put a leash and a collar on our dog and our dog feels that tension from the leash, they automatically, instinctively, they're not even thinking about it, they start pulling against that leash because of the leash tension that's pulling against them. It's called opposition reflex, so they're gonna pull in the opposite direction of that leash pressure, and that's what creates a leash puller because it happens over and over and over. So now let's talk about the method that we're gonna use to stop leash pulling very quickly with our big leash pulling dog. The first thing we need to understand is the process. So first of all, when our dog comes outside, they're gonna start pulling. They're gonna start pulling this way, that way, what they've been doing. So we need to start creating a pattern interrupt in that behavior. What I recommend is you hold the leash tightly, hold it by the handle, let your dog kind of walk off away from you. I'm going to show you how to do this here in a second with the dog. And as your dog begins to reach the end of the leash, all I want you to do is turn to the right, and I want you to pin that leash up against your body. Use your body as basically a wall, and when your dog hits the end of that leash, the leash is going to go tight, and instead of them pulling you that way, you're now going to put all of your body weight into going the opposite direction. What will happen is your dog's going to turn around, start moving toward you, toward your direction. When they do that, ideally they come up on your left side. You can use the leash to guide them, and you would reward them for coming up to your left side. You're most likely going to do this back and forth a couple of times, and then after a couple of times, your dog's going to stop going to the end of the leash and start looking at you or wondering what's happening, and that's when you want to start rewarding your dog for keeping a loose leash and staying next to you. So you should see good results within one session of doing this, but if you do this consistently, session after session, they're gonna stop leash pulling, and then you can start fine-tuning your actual leash walking behavior. All right, so we got Ruby out here. She's a Newfoundland, big dog, very powerful dog. We're gonna demonstrate the technique that we already discussed real quick. So remember, I'm gonna turn to the right when she pulls. I'm gonna turn to the right and let the leash do the work for me. We're out here at our canine retreat where we do all of our board and train programs before we start doing our generalization training. Obviously, if you don't have a setup like this, I want you to think about your sidewalk. So you can use your sidewalk, you can use your driveway, you just need something that you can walk back and forth on, right? So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna initiate walking in this direction, right? She is a little bit distracted by the cameraman, but she's gonna walk off. I grip the leash, I turn to the right, and I'm gonna use that leash to guide her to my left side like this right here. Notice she's gonna walk off ahead of me again when she is not distracted by the cameraman. So she walks ahead, I grip that leash, and I just tug it gently as I'm moving to the right. And ideally, I'm gonna start setting up, being able to reward out of my bait bag on my left side. Notice she's going ahead of me right here. Grip the leash to the right like this. Use the leash to guide her right here. Now that she's on my left side, I'm gonna say good and reward. Okay, she just took a reward out of my hand. She's going that way, I'm going this way, right? I'm letting the leash do the work for me. Right here, she's going off to my right side. I need her on my left side, so I'm using the leash to guide her right to my left side. Good. She gives me she gave me a look right here. Okay, right here. Good, she's staying relatively good right here already. So I can say good, I can reward. Right here, good. Right here, okay? So notice what I did with the leash. I folded it in half like that. It's a nice loose leash. I've got it in my right hand. That way when she starts to walk off on me, I can say no. Give her a little tug right here to the right, and then I can reward right here. Remember, we will reduce rewards as training goes on. But for right now, I like a continuous reinforcement. Notice how she's walking off, grip the leash right here. I pull to the right, I turn my body to the right. She's coming up on my left side. Good, I say good. I reward right here. I've already folded the leash in half right here. I'm just letting it rest. I'm letting my right arm rest nicely. Nice loose leash. As long as she's on my left side, I'm gonna say good. I'm going to reward down my left side, right? Good girl. I can also pet her, right? She's a very slobbery dog, so be prepared for some slobber in your hand when you're doing this, right? So I'm about to turn to the right here. Grip that leash like that, boom. Good, right? She goes a little bit ahead, I can say no, little tug. But that turn to the right is what I want you to focus on when you're working with your big dog, right? And it might be the first couple times you do it, it might be a lot of pressure you feel as your dog hits the end of that leash and turns around. But as you get to doing a couple of those, and now she's walking pretty good next to you, she's walking off on me, boom, I do the right turn. Just let that leash do the work for me. I'm not yanking it. I'm not going crazy with it. I just want her to feel the end of the leash, and I'm moving with my body the opposite direction, right? So it's my body with the leash versus her body weight, and she could weigh more than you, right? I'm about 200 pounds. She's probably close to 200 pounds. So we're about equal on body weight, but she has 4 paws on the ground. I only have 2 legs right here. She's walking off on me right here. Boom, right here. Good, good girl, right? So even if you're 120 pounds, right? Let's say you're 120 pounds, this technique still works. You just in your mind, you have to stay focused on pinning this leash to your body and letting your body do the work for you with that leash. So right here, she's walking ahead. I turn to the, good. Look at that, good. She saw me turning, right? This is what'll start happening too, is they'll start paying more attention to your body, which is what we want. So this is the technique right here. Let me know in the comments below if it's working for you or if you're still having some difficulty. So a couple of questions that a lot of people ask me about certain specific situations that they find themselves in with their dog as they're working on their leash pulling. What if their dog starts pulling toward other dogs or other people? Well, this comes down to threshold, distance to distraction. So if you're struggling with this, follow the basics that we've showed you today in this demonstration. And as you approach other dogs or other people, don't let your dog get in the habit of pulling away from you to go to them. You may have to stay at a healthy distance away from other dogs and people while you continue to work on your leash walking. And as time goes on, then you can slowly decrease the distance to these distractions and maintain good leash walking behavior. Another question I get asked a lot about is, what if my dog is pulling to the side to sniff things or pee on things or whatever? And what I recommend for this situation is, as you develop your leash walking, have a specific command or a word or a cue that you use to communicate to your dog when you're on a formal walk. I use the word heel. So when I say heel, as I've developed my leash walking, the dog will come to my left side and walk nicely on my left side. And when I've said heel, the dog is to not go off and sniff things. If they do, they're walking out of loose leash walking position. So I'm going to say no. I'm going to tug on my leash. I'm going to give a leash correction for breaking that loose leash walking position. And then the dog will come back to good position. I'll reward them. Over time, what happens is the dog knows when I say heel that you're not to go sniff things or pee on things. With that being said, during the walk, I will give the dog time to sniff and pee on things, and I'll say free. And when I say free, you can release from that walking position, that formal walking position. You can go off, you can sniff things, you can pee on things, but you're still not allowed to pull me. If you start pulling, I'm going to say no and give a little tug on the leash. Another question I get asked a lot is, what if there's multiple family members working with the dog? The thing is, everyone has to be on the same page. Everybody has to be very consistent with the same behaviors. You can't have one person letting the dog pull you like crazy and the next person not doing that. So if that becomes a struggle, maybe have one person develop the behavior, work with the dog, and then once that dog masters that behavior, then you could teach the rest of the family how to preserve and maintain that behavior when they're walking. Something else that a lot of people ask me about, using e-collars, using prong collars for leash pulling. Yes, I will use prong collars at times in certain situations, but I might use prong collars possibly 5% of the time with 5% of the dogs that I train. Most dogs are very trainable, very receptive to the methods that I've showed you in today's video, that you've seen in our other videos, and that you've seen in my book, The Ultimate Leash Training Manual. Only if I have a dog that is really struggling will I move to a prong collar, and that's not because I'm against prong collars, it's just because prong collars have a higher likelihood of causing irritation to the skin, and I want to prevent any type of irritation as much as possible. But they are effective, especially for periods of time for certain dogs. E-collars, I will condition every dog that I train to an e-collar, but it's not how I teach the dog the behavior. I'll use it later. It's a layer of training that will add on to things that the dog has already learned. So it is something that I will do later in training. And if you want my complete tutorial and beginner's guide on e-collar conditioning, which is teaching your dog how to interpret the e-collar like an invisible leash, I'll leave a link to the video down in the description below for you to access immediately. All right, so if all this made sense to you, I want you to start practicing this with your dog. And you don't have to have a big dog to use these techniques. You can also do it with medium, small, large dogs, whatever. But this technique is very effective to stop the leash pulling very quickly, and then you can fine tune your leash pulling like I already said. So practice it with your dog. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought. Let me know if it was helping you or whether it wasn't helping you. And with that being said, if you want our complete leash pulling system, just go to the description down below. Click the link for the Ultimate Leash Training Manual. It's $10 on Amazon. I wrote the book myself. And if you want to work with our team, go to the link in the description below, click that link, reach out to us. We can set up a phone call and discuss how we can support you either through one of our board and train programs or virtual training where we're going to coach you on how to train your dog. And if you want to learn that e-collar training that I was talking about earlier, just click this video right here. It'll take you right to my e-collar tutorial for beginners. I'll see you in that video.